Welcome back, everybody, to 0 and 2 Heroes. I know it's been a long time since the last episode. I think the last episode was in March of 2022, so excuse us as we go on a year-long hiatus. But we are happy to be back, and we have a very exciting game to talk about. All the previous episodes, they've kind of just been like randomly obscure games from people's childhoods. But I'd go on record saying this is the first good game that we've covered on this show, and I'm very excited to talk about it, and I have a wonderful guest who suggested this game. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but please welcome to the show.
Hi, I am John Haig. I am the creator and host of the Video Game Lounge podcast. Mikey Tabletop, thank you so much for having me, man.
Thank you so much for coming on. I remember, I forget what Discord it was in, but I was like, hey, I'm looking to start up the fighting game podcast again. I understand it's more accessible than having people come on and try energy drinks, so open invite. Who wants to jump on and talk fighting games? And instantly you were in my DMs like, yo, let's do a Tekken game. I'm like, great, let's do it.
Yeah, man, and not just any Tekken game. One of my favorite Tekken games, Tekken 3, my man.
Yeah, Tekken 3. So I remember when we were talking, you said I'm down for either Tekken 2 or Tekken 3. And I think we decided on Tekken 3. So tell us a little bit about, out of all of the fighting games in the universe, why you picked Tekken 3 for this.
And so Tekken 3 is just kind of a near and dear game to my heart from when I was actually still playing fighting games back in the day. So I'm talking like early 2000s and playing with my buddies. Like I can vividly remember being in high school and then eventually college playing on PS2 with the multi-tap. You remember that?
Mhm.
We can do like the local 4-player
Yeah.
like co-op or competitive. And man, like this game, and then I think it came out after this, but Tekken Tag Tournament was the game
Mhm.
that just like ruled my dorms when I was in college. Like we just played the hell out of both these games. So yeah, it's been 20 years since I've played either one, but they're just I don't know. I always gravitated towards Tekken as a fighting game. Like I grew up with Mortal Kombat on Sega, and then I wasn't nearly as good with Street Fighter, but for some reason Tekken just grabbed me, man, and I've always just been a fan. And eventually, like Soul Calibur, a little bit down the
Mhm.
line when they added Yoshimitsu, because Yoshimitsu is my dude.
Mhm.
Maybe a spoiler for later, we'll see. But but yeah, man, I've just always loved Tekken. Tekken's just always been my go-to like side-scrolling fighting game.
Nice. That's so exciting. I never had Tekken as a kid. Tekken was my best friend. It was one of his favorite games. So whenever I went to his house, I would play it with him, but I never owned it. I never like practiced it as a kid. I much
Sure.
preferred like the Street Fighter style games where you don't have
Yeah.
that third dimension. I liked I was a big fan of Marvel vs. Capcom. That was like my go-to fighting game as a kid.
Yep.
Um I could never get my brain to work in 3D. That extra step always threw me for a loop. And I was thinking as an adult, if I come into it now, maybe I'll have a better grasp. Maybe I'll understand it because I'm not a kid anymore. Nope. I keep fighting, and I always forget that I can move up or I can move down and go in another direction. Uh,
Yeah.
so like I have not grown up with it. But so you talked a little bit about how you that was one of the first fighting games, and you played that in college and stuff. Besides Tekken and like fighting games, like how did you get into video games? What was the first game you were like, oh shit, this is cool and it has me hooked?
Oh man. So, all right. I'm 36, so I've been gaming for over 30 years. I started when I was 5 and like with the Sega Genesis, and it's crazy to me that there is a generation of kids that don't even know what the Sega Genesis is. But I can remember playing like Madden 91, Madden 92, Shinobi 2 and 3, just some Streets of Rage, like
Mhm.
other just really great Sega games. It wasn't really until about 1998 when this little known game called Metal Gear Solid came out
Mhm.
that like I that was like the first video game that I played where I sat with my mouth agape for the entire experience. It was so well done. and it got me it got me to be an even bigger fan of video games after playing that game. So from there, it just branched off into playing a variety of things, like RPGs. So huge Final Fantasy fan. I have now kind of shifted more into the single player kind of story driven narrative games,
Mhm.
kind of like the Sony specialties. So things like God of War or The Last of Us, Horizon games, that type of stuff is kind of where I'm more into now.
As soon as you said Metal Gear, I thought to myself, "Man, that's so silly. I could have answered this question for him."
Yeah.
Because I started going back and I was trying to catch up on some of the earlier episodes of your show because I know
Yeah.
recently you've been doing a lot of Last of Us like TV show reviews. But
Yeah.
I went back and I listened to your Mount Rushmore of gaming episode,
Yes.
and you said Metal Gear. I'm like, oh, I could have answered that for him. I knew that.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you listening, man. Yeah, that was a
Yeah.
very fun episode. Yeah, please go back and listen to that. I don't remember the episode number, but my one of my co-hosts, Andrew, and I, we just kind of went through our Mount Rushmore of games and talked about the game. And I did my list based on the games that were most impactful for me.
Mhm.
So like what games would I put up on a Mount Rushmore and say these were the games that molded me and shaped me as a video game player and someone who enjoys video games. So that was the whole idea of it.
I was listening to that episode at work, and it was really funny because your co-host Andrew is he close to your age?
Yeah, yeah, he's actually 3 months older than me. Yeah.
Okay, you're 39. I'm 28. So you grew up with like the generation of video games before I did, and it's funny because Andrew's Mount Rushmore is my exact Mount Rushmore, but the generation previously.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
like he had the first Legend of Zelda, and I had
Yep.
Ocarina of Time. He had, man, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. He had another game, and I'm like, oh, it's that game, but for like the GameCube instead of for the 64 or whatever. It was, but
Exactly, yeah.
it's very funny. His and I Mount Rushmores lined up almost like 1 to 1.
That's awesome. I'll have to let him know that. I'll have to let him know.
Yeah, yeah, it was so funny. But so I'm very excited to play Tekken 3 because, like I said earlier, like whenever I reach out to people, they're like, "Yeah, I played this game as a kid. It's so much fun. I want to revisit it." And it's always these obscure games that I've never heard of before. And
Yeah.
and funny enough, so far all of the games that we've done on the show have exclusively been for the PS1. It's not like we're a PS1 podcast. It just so happens
Sure, yeah.
everyone grew up with a PS1.
Yeah.
Um, and one of the games was Bushido Blade, which is fun, but just like I've never heard of it before. One of them was Air Guys, which was fun, never heard of it before. One of them was
Never heard of that,
Geo
yeah.
One of them was Geo Matrix Heavy Metal. Never heard of it before, but it was fun. So when you said Tekken, I'm like, oh, I know that. That's like a
Yeah.
real game.
Yeah, man, I know I any of those obscure titles you just mentioned, I know nothing of, man. I
Yeah,
kinda just stick to the mainstream shit,
yeah,
and that's like that's my thing.
yeah. So when you pitch Tekken, I'm like, yes, a game I know, a game I've played, a game maybe someone might be interested in listening to. Just because, like, unless you're like into video games and you want to hear about any of them, if I said, "Hey, I have a podcast on a Geo Matrix Heavy Metal, do you want to listen to it?" You'd be like, I don't know what that is."
No.
Tekken, everybody knows Tekken though.
Everybody should know Tekken. It's I mean, it's crazy. Like, I live about 20 minutes from a Dave& and Buster's. They
Mhm.
still have a Tekken, like, machine, to play.
Really?
Like, with the old school joysticks and the, like, ABC buttons. I'm like, "Man," I go to it's Tekken 1 or 2, I don't
Mhm.
remember, but it's still is fun to play for me. So
So for the last couple of weeks, I've been practicing Tekken 3, and in Philly at the end of the month, there's a free video game convention happening at the Pier, and they're hosting a Tekken 7 tournament. Yeah, I bought Tekken 7 when it was on sale. Haven't opened it. Haven't even played it once. So I was hoping if I started with Tekken
Yeah,
3, as soon as we're finished with the podcast, I'm just going to move on to Tekken 7. Hope some of the stuff carries over. That way, when I go into the tournament, I
yeah,
at least have some idea of what's happening.
yeah. I got a warm up from 20 years ago.
Yeah, and just like I'm trying to think of the last time I played a Tekken game, and it was probably when the PS2 was still like the new console. I don't think I've played anyone
Yeah.
since.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned Dave& and Buster's, but I've gone, like, twice maybe in the last, like, 3 or 4 years. So I can't actually speak to if that Tekken game's still there, but to actually play a console version, like, controller in hand, has been since college, which is almost 20 years ago for me, so it's been a minute.
Have you besides for this podcast, have you gone back to revisit any of the Tekken games? Like anytime,
No.
not even recently, just like
Yeah.
10 years ago, let's say.
No, again, like the last time I visited the universe of Tekken would have been 20 years ago. At least 18 maybe, but still, like it's been some time. Yeah, I kind of fell off after college, like because it became such a communal thing.
Mhm,
And when I didn't have like anyone in my neighborhood or anyone near me that would play, and online was still kind of like wishy-washy at this
mhm.
point, I kind of like lost interest in it. And then I started finding other games play that I found more enjoyable. So
When you booted this game up and you started playing it, did you feel some of the memories come back to you? Do you remember like, "Oh, I remember how to do this combo," or, "Oh, I know what to do with presumably Yoshimitsu." Did it start like
yeah,
clicking in your head again?
a little bit, but I was taken back just from the PlayStation logo and
Mhm.
the bling. I
The
was like,
sound
oh my
coming
gosh,
in.
yeah. I was like, man, I feel old. Like this is my childhood here and adolescence. um, yeah. Once I so I'll admit here. So what I did was I went into training mode and then I just put the CPU character
Mhm,
as a training dummy. And then I was like, all right, let me just see if I can get a combo, like not just like a punch or a kick, but like let
mhm.
me see if I can remember something. And I remembered like two moves, but I ended up having to keep pausing and go, "Oh, this is how I do that. This is how I do that." And it's like I think I'm hitting these buttons correctly, and nothing's happening. Well, we'll see how this shit show goes.
I when I used to play with my friend, I didn't have one character that I felt drawn to, so I would just like bounce between all of them. So I was gonna try and do that for this, and every time I played a new character, I would have to pause and look up the menu, and it got
Yeah,
to the point where like I'm not remembering any of these combos for all of these characters. I'm just gonna have to like pick one and
yeah.
see what happens.
Yeah, I think Tekken, well, maybe most fighting games are probably like this because I feel like Mortal Kombat and
Mhm,
Street Fighter kind of do this too. But like, I end up having to just stick with like one or two characters. I learn I used this is again 18, 20 years ago, but I used to memorize like two or three characters
mhm.
as complete of a move set as possible. Because if I started doing more than that, everything would just like blend together, and it's like, but I'm hitting the combo. Oh, well, that's for Jin and not Heihachi,
Yeah.
or this, and it's man, I stick with one or two characters, maybe three, if the move set is easy enough to memorize or
Mhm.
something like that. But yeah, I had a little trouble, but I'm still looking forward to it because like the graphics still look really badass
Yeah.
for a game that's I don't know 22 years old or something. Like it still
Mhm,
plays well as I'm playing it on my computer, and I was like, the whole 3D aspect of it, I think still looks
mhm.
really cool.
Yeah, so I have two points that came to me while you were saying that. While some other fighting games have a combo system, like Street Fighter, you have to do like the stick
Yeah,
movements and press a button. Tekken is like widely known to be the most complex of fighting games because
sure.
every iteration they do, they add more and more combos. Where I think Tekken 7, I read online, some characters have like, if you pull up their move list, 100 plus moves that you have to like learn.
Jeez. Yeah,
Just because Tekken, unlike other fighting games that have like a punch, like a light, medium, and heavy punch and kick,
yeah.
Tekken's cool because it's left hand, right hand, left foot, right foot, and
Yep.
that's how the moves come out, which I think is like a really unique way to do a fighting game.
And each punch and kick do way more damage. Like
Mhm.
if you can't land the combo in Tekken, if you still get one or two hits in, it's like, oh hey, that guy just got down 28% of his health. That's cool. Where like you need the combos in some of those other games. Or
Yeah.
you need that guy who's playing Scorpion to just throw the frickin' spear and the get over here. Um, so I think Tekken kind of made up for it with the how much damage you can do. And so if you
Mhm.
don't land the combos, you still feel like you're accomplishing something.
Yeah, it feels like every hit that you land is satisfying. Like even if
Yeah.
they block it or even if you like miss it, just when it connects, you're like, ooh, like you feel it because it's like I don't know if it's the sound effects, if it's the little all of the electricity that comes out when you punch it, but when you land a hit, it's like, oh man, that felt good hitting that.
Yeah. It felt real good. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you mentioned a little bit earlier about how good it still looks. This was originally released as an arcade game and then ported to the PS1, and
Yeah.
there was some conversation internally at the time if they could even port it to the PS1 because I believe, if I remember the name correctly, like whatever the Namco arcade board was, they went from the Namco arcade board 11 to 12 and like upped the graphics. And they
Right.
were looking at the Sony like dev kit and they're like, I don't know if the PS1 can do this.
Right. Can't handle it.
Yeah. So this is actually a downgraded graphic like version of the arcade one. All of the backgrounds you see are they're flat 2D images, whereas in the arcade one, they're also 3D polygons. But they had to like downgrade everything to let it fit and like run on the PlayStation. But I
Yeah.
think even with the quote unquote downgrades, I don't want to say it looks bad. It still looks phenomenal. It's just that the
Yeah.
arcade version was even more phenomenal, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Um, I didn't know that it was a downgraded version,
Mhm.
honestly. That's um a great bit of info. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm just looking it up right now. It was ported to the PlayStation in 1998.
Mhm.
So that's a, that's a long time ago, man. And it
Yeah.
still looks pretty good. I'm quite impressed with it, honestly.
Yeah, sometimes when you go play a PS1 game, just like I'm gonna throw Final Fantasy VII under the bus. When they walk out and they're just like their body's just a diamond and their arms are just like
Yeah.
bulbs, they look kind of
Yeah.
funny. And to compare that to this, also on the PS1, you're like, wow, this looks amazing.
Yeah, there's actual like definition in the
Yeah,
legs and the arms and even the faces a little bit too. So yeah.
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 Like looking at these characters look like actual people and not like Walmart off-brand Lego figures. You know, just
Yeah. They don't look like what do they call the fatheads, like the sports player
yeah,
like
yeah.
cutouts.
Yeah, so I have a couple notes, but I was going to talk to that after we fought. Is there anything you want to talk about before we get into the fight?
Oh man, I'm just excited to be here. Thanks again for having me on. And I'm ready to get my ass kicked. So
Ooh, you say that, and you might think I'm good at fighting games because I host a fighting game podcast, but so far I've lost every game I've played for this podcast. I have yet to win one.
right on, man. Well, I think we're gonna be about as probably evenly matched as possible. See it as I haven't actually played this game in 20 years and it's been a while for you. So
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very excited to get into this match. Listeners, obviously, it's not very fun to listen to two people play video games. So if you want to watch the match, the link for the YouTube will be included in the show notes. But stay tuned. We'll be right back after a quick ad break from one of our sponsors. If you're like me, that means you're getting older. Every time you step out of the shower, you look at yourself and go, can't believe I'm losing that much hair. I don't know about you, but I am sick and tired of it. I'm also sick and tired of all of these podcasts getting sponsors from manscaping.com. Look, I'm losing enough hair as is. I'm not going to shave off what little I have left. So today, I am proud to announce that this week's sponsor is the official bush grower. That's right, it is the anti-manscaping formula you need for hair growth in your more gentle areas. Now, I have a disclaimer here. I've been specifically told it does not work on the rest of your body, on your arms, your legs, your hair, like on the top of your head, or your facial hair. The special formula is specifically designed for your gentle bits. If you go to their page, you can find a whole bunch of frequently asked questions and they will address all of them. one of my favorite frequently asked questions is, will this help regrow some of the hair on my backside? Yes, this special formula will only work on the front and back of your more delicate areas. So if you're tired of constantly being bombarded about manscaping and trying to make sure everything looks nice, if you're sick and tired of being told, hey, it looks like Professor X down there, then this is the product for you. Let me tell you, I use this product not every day, but almost an every other day basis. And it's like a jungle down there. I swear to God, lost a goldfish in it one time, and then when I showered the next day, it came out. I was like, oh, great. I was hungry. This works out. It opens up a world of possibilities, and I can't recommend it enough. Again, that is the official bush grower. If you go onto their website right now, www.growyourbushtothemax.net, and use promo code O2Heroes, you'll save 31% at checkout. That's right, use promo code O2Heroes on bushgrower.net, and you'll save 31% at checkout. Don't fall into the peer pressure of other podcasts. Don't listen to all of those lying manscaping ads. What you want is a full bush. And thank you for sticking around from that ad break. I hope you go support whatever anti-manscaping product there is. It might not be for everyone, but I guarantee you it's for everyone. So, if you haven't gone back to watch the YouTube video, something amazing happened.
Something did.
It ended in a tie. It went to game 5, and then we both KO'd each other at the same time.
In all my years of playing Tekken, I say all my years, like I haven't played in so long, but I've never seen the double KO before, ever. Especially in the last round. Like, that was amazing.
So this is the first time in podcast history that the game's going to end in a draw. It's going to, no one wins, no one loses. It's just going to end in a tie, and we're going to just have to leave it there. So, having now played it against someone for the first time in years, what did you think? Was it fun?
Oh man, it was absolutely a blast. I was trying to remember moves so that I could be on the left side of the screen. It is so weird inverting, right?
Yeah.
But man, it was so much fun. It takes me back to my high school and college days. So again, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me on here. It was an absolute blast. But man, it was fun. The controls were just as fluid and easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's just trying to figure out the combos again.
Yeah. When I was practicing, I was originally playing on the controller. But little behind the scenes thing here, we had to swap emulators at the last minute because one of them wasn't playing nicely. So I ended up playing the games we played on my keyboard, and I had no idea what I was doing on the keyboard, but I tried to map it to like similar buttons. So yeah. I didn't know the combos on this either. I know which one's a punch, which one's like a kick, but it was tough for me to like go through all of the combos on the keyboard. But that was wild. I was never expecting a draw. Did you do any research or look up any character stuff before this podcast?
No. Again, so when like you were my IT support this morning, helping me get the emulator going, and so I was like, okay, the two characters that I feel like most comfortable with in Tekken, one of them's not even in this game. He's in Tekken Tag, and that's Bayek. He's like story wise, he's Hwoarang's like mentor or teacher.
Oh, okay.
So I was like, all right, well, I'm going to go with Yoshimitsu and I'm going to go with Law. And those were like the two guys that I practiced with. I didn't know any of their movesets or could remember anything until I went in. If you watch the YouTube clip, you'll see me do a stab move for a KO against Mikey. I don't know what the buttons were that I pressed.
It took like 90% of my health. It was like almost a one-shot kill. I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, I know that there's also a version of his where he can run up to you and he turns around and he stabs himself and you, and it does like 80% damage to both. So that's another way of kind of KOing both people.
Oh, that's very cool.
But I've never in all of my fighting game history seen a double KO where both players hit each other at the same time. And I'm still like, my mind is blown. That's so freaking cool. So while there wasn't a winner between the two of us, ladies and gentlemen, as the viewers, you guys get to be the winners because that's pretty damn
Yeah.
cool.
So it was fun to play, but it seems like everyone won except us. And like
Yeah.
we talked about this off mic, but we had some tech issues setting up the emulators. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure we spent more time trying to get the game running than we did actually playing it.
Yes. Yes. Maybe doubly so actually,
Yeah.
but it's all good, man. It was a blast. This was fun. It's your typical, maybe not typical, but like we were talking in the opening portion that like why Tekken is so much different. Like it's the way that Tekken's set up versus the other fighting games, this was still just fun to get back into and play for
Yeah.
the first time in such a long time. And I don't know, I've always found Tekken to be easier. That's not always the case with most people and fighting games, but man, it's just fun. That's all I can say, man. It was fun.
It was a lot of fun. And I say this every episode, but it's so much more fun playing against someone, like having you on the mic talking to you, as compared to just beating up computers in the basement by myself. This was like so much more enjoyable than just practicing.
Yeah, exactly, man. So
It's been years since I played Tekken, so I try to look up some YouTube stuff to see if it would like come back to me to see if I remember anything. And I didn't realize this, but do you know what Korean backdashing is?
no.
It's a thing that's in newer Tekken games, and I thought it was a newer thing. It started with this one. So, if you double press forward or double press backwards, you kind of like move faster in that direction.
Yeah, you kind of run in that direction.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They figured out a way that a Korean backdash is to help you back up quicker. So instead of having to go back, wait, back, wait, back, wait, Korean backdashing is kind of like a thing where you, instead of pressing back, you press like back and back down, and it tricks the controller into thinking you did. It's essentially just a way to make you move faster backwards. And it's a thing that
Oh.
if you go to a Tekken tournament, everyone, that's like a default movement option. You have to know how to use that to do well. It's like real big in the competitive scene.
Gotcha.
I didn't know it started with this, and I tried doing it. Had no idea how.
I know, like, especially with this being in a 3D world, right? Like, there's a way where you can just kind of keep circling the map of whatever you're on, and I was trying to do some of that too to kind of get away, especially with like Yoshimitsu, because he has a move where he can sit down and kind of meditate and get some of his health back. So I was like, man, when you were working me there, I was like, oh man, I got to try and get away. So I was trying to do like his spin move to get out of harm's way, and I think it ended up like doing the opposite and just put me right in a way to get a roundhouse kick to the face. So
like I mentioned earlier, this was the first time we've played a game that's like classically considered good. So I don't have like a place in the podcast where this normally goes, because it's the first time it's come up. But I have some accolades here for the game that I wanted to go through.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
It won the best fighting game of the year from the Game Critics Awards, EGM, and Game Informer. All three of them gave it Fighting Game of the Year.
Wow.
It's the second highest rated PS1 game on Metacritic. Can you guess what it's behind? The one game on the PS1 ahead of it.
PS1. Oh, I'm going to say Gran Turismo.
Close. Gran Turismo beat it on another ranking, but on Metacritic, it's only behind Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2.
Oh, wow. And I love that game. Oh my God, do I adore Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2.
And then Game Rankings, which I believe is just like a fan community site, and people can vote on like how good a game is. They have it ranked as the 12th best game of all time. It's the 12th highest ranking game on like their communal ranking. So
wow. So not just like for PlayStation. This is across consoles.
All consoles, all decades. It's like all time, number 12.
Man, what a prestigious game.
Yeah, I know. And if you at home want to play this game, it's available on the PS1. We played it on an emulator. Did you play Tekken 5 for the PS2?
I did not. I sadly, really, like I said in the opening, after college, Tekken Tag, I think, was really the last new Tekken game that I played. I haven't played a Tekken game, a newer one, at all. So
I think it's funny that you call Tekken 5 a newer one, and it came out in like 2003 or something.
2004, yeah.
Like Tekken 5 had something called Arcade History Mode, where you can go
Oh,
through
nice.
and play just the single player arcade mode of Tekken 1, 2, and 3. And it came like within the disc. So, like, if you had a PS2, you can play Tekken 3 that way. And it was also included in the PS1 Classic that Sony put out a couple years ago.
Nice. Dig it. That's so cool.
Now, in addition to this, I have the Dolphin emulator on my computer, and I use that to play Super Smash Bros. Melee a whole bunch. And it started off as a joke in the first episode, but it's just turned into a running gag at this point, where after about 20 minutes of practicing any other fighting game, I go, I should just be playing Smash Bros. I'll turn it off and go play Melee instead. If
Yeah.
if you were having a party and you were getting together with some friends, and you could only pick, you want to play Melee for the GameCube or Tekken 3, what are you bringing to the party?
Man, see, what's crazy, I have my N64 like right upstairs with Super Smash Brothers, and my 8-year-old son and I have been playing old school Smash Brothers game.
Nice.
And he's actually getting pretty good.
Has he beaten you yet?
Have I let him beat me? Yes. Has he beaten me straight up yet? No, but he's gotten me a few times. Like his move is to just chuck every barrel and hope that he gets the hammer and just, go to town on me with the hammer. And what's funny is, like, if I beat him with a character, so if I love using Mario, so if I beat him with Mario, he's like, oh, next turn I want to be Mario. And I'm like, well, okay, you can do that, but he's not going to be as good for you as he was for me because you don't understand the moves. Yeah, but that's a great question, Mike. I'm gonna say I'm still gonna go with Tekken 3 just because of the amount of time that I had spent in the Tekken universe, 18, 20 years ago, and playing, with the multi-tap and the 4-person local local multiplayer. I don't know, some about Tekken, man. I do love Smash Brothers. I get worked in Smash Brothers though. Like I can beat my kid in Smash Brothers. I can't beat many other people. So Tekken, I can kind of hold my own.
Nice.
I may end up having to like use this emulator and just play just work through the story or something just to play because it's so much fun.
I don't have kids myself, but when I first started dating my girlfriend, her youngest sibling, her brother, I think was 8 at the time, and he's because he was 6 at the time when we first started dating, and he's 16 now. So like, I got to almost grow up with him playing video games. We're just like,
Nice.
He was a kid, and like he's looking at college now. He's like almost an adult, and I remember he used to like playing Smash Bros with me. He bought like a used Street Fighter game for the 360 one time. He used to like playing Street Fighter.
Man.
And I remember the first time, like I used to like let him win. So because it's not fun if you're just like destroying this little kid all the time. And I remember when, I don't know, he was like 10, maybe a few years into it, the first time like he legitimately beat me in a game. And I was like, what? I didn't let you win. You beat me. And then I remember, and I told him this last summer. I held on to that. He beat me in Street Fighter 4. He bought it for the 360. I didn't have it, and he played Street Fighter all summer with his friends. So when I came to visit, he was like, "Mike, I'm excited to play you. I can beat you." And like, he legitimately beat me. I'm like, dude, that's wild. And I'm a sore loser. I held that grudge for years. An arcade opened up in town just last summer, and they had a Street Fighter 2 cabinet. So I have Street Fighter 2 at home. I practiced for weeks Street Fighter 2. And I was like, hey, Ed, we're going to the arcade. My treat. It's opening day. Let's go hang out. And I'm like, let's play Street Fighter just for fun. And then like I beat him, and I was like, you're almost an adult now. You're 16. I can tell you this. You kicked my ass one time, and I've held a grudge for 8 years now. I've been practicing. I am so glad I got my revenge. I was like,
and what was Ed's response?
He was a good sport about it. He didn't realize that, but him being like an obnoxious teenager, he was like, I can't believe you were mad for 8 years. I'm so happy I made you mad. He's
You're
like
an adult, bro.
Yeah. And then he was like, okay, I'm just gonna have to like find a new game, get really good at it, not tell you, and then because it's like fun now. Because like when he was little, it was like, and we would play video games. It was like almost I was like watching him. I was babysitting him. But when the arcade opened, it was I picked him up and we went. It was like I was hanging out with him. He's no
Yeah.
longer a kid, so it was like fun that we were like hanging out playing video games. So he's like, I have to find a new game. I'm gonna practice not tell you, and then I'm gonna kick your ass in that game next. I'm like, all right, let's do it.
So now there's like no trust at all. It's like, hey man, have you played game XYZ? It's like, I'm gonna say no
Yeah.
and hope that you haven't already been playing it for 3 weeks.
Yeah. So just like he's kind of like stopped playing fighting games and he's like into like shooting games now, which is like very clearly like not up my alley. Sometimes I'll play Fortnite with him, but
Yeah. Oh,
he
man.
knows he's better than me in those games, so it's no real contest.
Yeah, man, like Call of Duty's first person shooters are just like, I can play them if it's just for the social aspect of getting on with friends, but I am horrible. Like at the multiplayer, dude, my KDR on Warzone is like 0.04. Like I have like I die 100 times for every 4 kills. Like I'm trash. I am hot garbage when it comes to Warzone and Call of Duty, man. Can't do it.
Yeah, I'll sometimes like play Fortnite with like if I'm bored and there's nothing to do because so I don't I don't pay for internet on my PS4, so I can't
Gotcha.
play online a lot of games. You don't need to pay for online for Fortnite, so that's like the one
Exactly,
online game
yeah.
I have. So I play that sometimes, but I'm not much of a shooty guy either. That's why I host a fighting game podcast.
Nice.
And
Yeah,
then,
man.
yeah, the only I have one more question here in my notes,
Sure.
and it's if you could add anybody to Tekken 3, who would it be? It could be a character from a future game that you wanted in earlier, a guest character, or even just like if you want to go, I want someone who fights like this and like make up a character. Like
Yeah.
imagine you were Harada, you were in charge of Tekken 3. Who you throwing in?
Ah, man. Well, I mentioned him already. I'm going to throw it to my boy Bayek. He's in the Tekken Tag games. And so him and Horong together, they do Taekwondo. And man, when I could do them and remembered them, Bayek's kick combos were just absolutely nasty. They are devastating. He had like one like 3 kick like roundhouse kick combo that did like 65 damage if you landed all 3 kicks. Like they were just insane. He was such a fun character to play. Like him and Yoshimitsu were my 2 guys, and Eddie Gordo was Gordo was like my 3rd guy. But everybody kind of uses Eddie Gordo because it's like, oh, just button mash, and he's just gonna do the the capoeira stuff. Yeah. But yeah, man, I'd love to see Bayek in this game. Just because he's such a fun character for me, and that it's literally like the guy that I used throughout my Tekken Tag tournament days, like throughout college. So yeah, man.
Nice. Now I'm looking at my notes, and that's everything I got. Is there anything else Tekken 3 or Tekken overall that you had on the mind? Because the floor is yours. I'm here to talk Tekken all night.
Sure, appreciate it. Yeah, man, I just want to say, man, it was a blast getting back into this. I haven't played this in so long, and it was just really, really fun. I'm hoping that if you're listening to this and you haven't played it, if you're like us and haven't played it in years, like, man, go check it out. I'd love to know anyone and everyone who watches the YouTube video what you guys think. Like, we had fun playing it. Man, yeah, I don't really know what else to say, man. This was a great time. It was a great time.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun doing that. That was great. So now that we're at the end of Tekken, please, the floor is yours. Tell everybody where they can find you, find your podcast. Let us know.
We're the Video Game Lounge podcast. You can find us on Apple and Spotify, Google, anywhere you get your podcast. We're on social media at VGL_podcast. Our kind of goofy little tagline that I came up with at the beginning of this was, we're the podcast not here for notes and news, but to talk games and drink brews. So kind of every episode we just sit, we kind of pretend like we're kind of hanging out in a bar just with your friends talking games. Talk about a beer that we're drinking, what games we might be playing currently, and then just get into a topic or a game review. Mike, you mentioned at the top of the show that I was doing a Last of Us TV show reactions. Those were a lot of fun, so I did those. I just released an episode not too long earlier this week, actually, where I had a podcast buddy of mine come on. We actually discussed the Last of Us show as a whole and kind of just give our kind of final thoughts on it, and that was a lot of fun. and got a couple of cool episodes I'm excited for coming up. I got one on Final
Nice.
Fantasy X, which is my personal favorite Final Fantasy game, and then one spoiler cast for God of War Ragnarok, which I'm excited to release too. So
I am also excited for new episodes. I enjoyed the Last of Us discussions, but I'm excited to get back into video games and not TV. So
yeah,
I'm
man,
excited. I'm excited for those new ones.
awesome, appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Over on my end, I have a couple people I want to thank. We have
Yes.
an internship set up with the Camden County Community College. So this week we have a guest of rotating people behind the scenes. I'd like to thank Mark Gable, the sound engineer, Chloe Deschanel, the editor, and Cora Jones, the producer. I'd also like to thank Wes Mantooth, who now goes by the name HTML the Band, for that kick-ass theme song. Go support them. Their stuff is down below. And if you're listening to this, you already know where to find me. I don't need to plug all of that. However, I will say this is the first episode that's going on its own stream. So if you don't give a shit about comic books or the Australian kids cartoon Bluey or energy drinks, no worries. You don't have to subscribe to that. 0-2 Heroes now has its own RSS feed. If you're only here for fighting games, go. The new feed is on everywhere except Apple, because I have an Android phone and Apple refuses to engage with me. So I have to find someone with an iPhone to make an account and do all of that. But yeah, or you can stay on the BDE feed. It's going to be in both places. So no worries. You don't have to change anything unless you want to.
Awesome.
Well, John, thank you so much for coming on. I had so much fun. This was a blast. I'm sorry for all the technical difficulties, but I had a great time playing with you.
Oh, yeah, man, it was fun. And you know what? Technical difficulties be damned. We had a great time. I'm still smiling. Like I had a great time. So thanks again, Mikey, for having me on, man. And hopefully maybe we can have you in on VGL and we can talk about another video game, man. Look forward to
I
it.
would love to. I will never say no to being a guest on a podcast. I love to hear myself talk. You can't get me to shut up.
We have that in common, my friend.
Anyways, thank you everybody so much for listening, and we will catch you next time. Peace.
See you.